What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Dominic Rich, and I have my wonderful guests here with me, Ryan Anderson and Football Pharoah. Ryan, bro, how are you feeling today? Tell the people where they can find you.
I've been doing good. We've recorded a couple before this. This is one after the other, but I've been doing great. I've been having some fun. Find me on YouTube, Ryan Anderson. Search up my name as it is in the window. A lot of CONCACAF content, a lot of MLS. Sometimes talk about other sports because I can and I like other sports too. Also find me on Twitter, Ryan Anderson _27. If you want to find me on Instagram or TikTok, change that underscore to a period.
Well said. So the link to Ryan's YouTube channel will be in the description box down below. Football Pharoah, how are you feeling, bro? I know you must be exhausted. We on a marathon run banging these out. But how are you feeling today?
I'm hanging in there, dude. I'm doing all right. I'm glad to be making this with you and Ryan again, covering Asia, a very interesting sphere of the football world. You can find me on Football Pharoah at my YouTube channel, same name, Football Pharoah. You can also find me on Twitter, same name, Football Pharoah at Soccer Pharoah. That's at soccer_Pharoah. I'm ready to hop right into it.
All right. So before we get into it, we have 12 teams split into two groups of 6. The top 2 teams will qualify directly for Qatar, first and second in each group, while the third place teams will go into another round, play against each other, and the winner goes into an interconfederation or intercontinental playoffs, where the last time around Australia played against Honduras and it did get the better of them. So without further ado, let's get into these groups here. We are going to start with Group A, and in Group A, there's Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, South Korea, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates. So let us start with potential debutantes, Lebanon, the Cedars. Ryan, where do you have Lebanon in terms of them qualifying?
I have them on visa denied. They're a team that aren't really strong. I think they've been put in a group with some strong teams. I don't see them making a Cinderella run. They could develop their talent through this, but I think they hold a lot of corn in this group, and they are going to be visa denied for me.
Well said, well said. Football Pharoah, talk to me about the Cedars.
I love Lebanon as a country. It's a very pretty place. The Cedars, the national team, I think they're very lucky to be here. They benefited from North Korea withdrawing, and that's sort of like messing around with AFC's rules for the previous qualifying round, and that came to the detriment of the likes of Uzbekistan, and that actually allowed Lebanon to just narrowly squeak into this round on goal differential. I think across both groups, they're probably the worst team of the 12 teams that are still alive. I don't really have much else to say on them. I had them at visa denied, and I'll go ahead and say they're the only team I have on no, not the only team, but I have them at visa denied. I don't like their chances of coming through and qualifying.
Well said. So just for a little fact on Lebanon, they're currently managed by Ivan Hashek, and the captain and the most capped player, top goal scorer, Hassan Matouk. So look for Hassan Matouk to be the talisman if Lebanon are to come through this very, very tough group and qualify for their first ever World Cup in Qatar 2022. Look, not much more to add. You guys, I think, touched it, and I think Lebanon very, very lucky. I spoke about this many times. They're a decent team, but I don't see them doing much, and I have them at visa denied. Well, guys, just to explain the tiers that I failed to do at the beginning, visa denied are teams that we think they won't make it. They really won't make it. They don't stand a chance when stacked up against the other teams. But yeah, pretty much missed the flight. As you can see, I'm messing around with the colors here. We had a little discoloration going on there. Missed the flight of teams that we think could challenge, but at the end of at the end of it all, they would just miss the flight to Qatar. Standby are teams that we think has a very, very good chance of making it, but we're not 100% sure. And going to Qatar are teams that we are definitely sold on to qualify for the grand event. So that's Lebanon, and we are going to move on to the next team. Another potential debutants came very, very close. They came, let's say, 180 minutes. Let's say they came close. Not 180 minutes, but they almost made it to the Intercontinental Playoff when they missed out to Australia, and that's Syria. Ryan, where do you have Syria?
I have them on miss the flight. I like the talent that Syria have, but I think the UAE, Iraq, Iran are better teams. I think Syria got put in a hard... Both groups are hard, but there are teams that are not benefiting from the groups that they got put in. And that's a Syria. Syria's just not benefiting from being in this group. I think they will regress a bit. I don't think when they made it, it was due to really golden generation. I think they played well, but I think things could change, so I have them at miss the flight.
Yeah, last time around they really had some standout players, and like the names are not coming to me right now. What's his name again, Football Fairy? You know his name, man. Very prominent.
Is it Omar Al-Soma?
Omar Al-Soma and Omar Kabin. Yes, the names came back to me. These guys have not been in the squad. I don't know how Syria a very tricky team, because I was looking through their rosters, and those guys were not there. I expected those star men to be there, but apparently they somehow mustered together a very good team, and they're playing well as a unit without any huge stars. So I won't take Syria very, very lightly in this group at all. I definitely won't. One problem they do have is they do not play matches at home because of what's going on over in Syria. So that I think is a disadvantage to the team. And I've been impressed with them. I've really been impressed with them. And I think they could actually improve on what they did in the 2018 cycle and shock some of these heavyweights in Group A. And I have Syria on standby. Believe it or not, I have them on standby. Where do you have them, Football Pharaoh?
Yeah, I also have them on standby. I think that their recent performance in the Asian Cup in 2019, where they went out in the group stage, was very worrisome. And it might have indicated that maybe 2018, the World Cup qualifying cycle, was just a fortunate spell of form, similar to how Jordan unexpectedly came close to qualifying for the World Cup in 2014. But I think overall, this Syrian team still has enough depth in this squad. That's why they qualified first in their group in the previous round to make it to this final round relatively comfortably. It will be interesting to see if those veterans that they have called up upon in the past will play a prominent role in this round's qualifiers. I'm not too confident about their prospects of making it, but this is both groups are tough, like Ryan said. I think Group A is the toughest one, because I don't really see any clear favorites, for reasons that we'll get to later when we talk about Iran and South Korea. It's pretty much South Korea plus 5 Western Asian nations. I think it's going to be a very difficult group, and because of that, I think Syria are going to be in contention, and I have them on standby.
One positive for Syria is I just checked the squad, and Omar Kabin is in the team again. Omar Al-Soma, who's the captain of the team, listed as a captain, he's not in the squad for the upcoming matches in September. So let us see how they do. They look good. They have a lot of quality in their team, man. A lot of experience to mix with a few guys recently integrated into the team. So good luck to Syria, man. It would be nice to see them qualify. I think it would do a lot for the nation. The nation need that inspiration, seeing what they've been going through. And it would also nice to see a debutant at the World Cup, to say the least. So good luck to Syria. Let us move on to the UAE, who qualified in 1990, and we haven't seen them back since. This time around, Football Pharoah, I want you to go first. Talk to me about the UAE.
Yeah, I have them on standby. They got off to a poor start in the previous round where they had to make up some work during the compressed schedule. They played 4 games in June, 3 of which were at home. And they really rallied to pick up maximum points, ended up topping their group ahead of the likes of Thailand and Vietnam. You may remember they were in the group with all Southeast Asian nations.
Yep.
I think their current manager is Bert van Marwijk, if I'm not mistaken. He was the Dutch manager in 2010. I like their odds of being the outsider to make it back to the World Cup for the first time in several decades. You have guys like Ali Mabkout. He has 76 goals scored for his country. He's one of the highest scoring currently active players in the world for his national team. They have other guys like Fabio Lima. He's 28 years old. They have other guys that brought them to the semifinals on home soil of the Asian Cup under their previous manager back in 2019. I think that was Alberto Zaccaroni. He used to be the manager of Samurai Blue a few years before that. You know, the UAE, they're going to be a team that will possibly benefit from this World Cup being held in the Middle East. I think their entire squad, the last time I checked, is entirely domestically based. They play for teams in the Emirati League like Al Jazeera and Al Nasser and Al Ain. So maybe that'll be something of an advantage for them as far as team chemistry and familiarity playing with each other. And they're playing against other Arab nations in this group. I mean, I like their odds. I'm really bullish on their prospects, and I actually think that they will finish in a top 3 position in this group.
Well said, well said, well said. I think you said pretty much most things that I wanted to say on the UAE. I like that they were in that South Asian group, and they came through. They didn't start off too well, but they really rallied, and they came through to the last phase here. Look, something that I like that they've been doing is giving passports to a few Brazilians and a few Argentinians that's been in their domestic leagues for quite some time, and it does help to add strength and depth to their team, a little flair as well. Look, this is a group that UAE have a chance to place top 2 in, and by all means, look, with Bert van Marwijk as their manager, that was a great move as well, because he has experience with the Netherlands, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. He's a Dutchman, so that is a platform, a man who has the know-how at World Cups as well. So look, I have no choice but to put UAE on standby. So standby for me here, along with Syria in Group A. Ryan, talk to me.
I have the UAE on standby. I think they'll be in the fight for that 3rd spot in Group A. I like the way they're playing. I like the way they have all their players from their domestic league. They know each other already. I think the way they've been playing, I'm bullish on them. I think they fight for 3rd. They may miss out, but I have them on standby. I think they do finish 3rd, but they do have the playoff spot, I think. I don't think anything better, but they're on standby for me.
Well said, well said. And we're going to keep the ball rolling, and let us talk about a very prominent team in Asia, South Korea. Football Pharaoh, talk to me about South Korea here.
The one thing that concerns me about South Korea is the fact that, and this could change depending on COVID scheduling, demanding AFC to play these games at a centralized venue. I haven't heard any word on that recently, but if they do indeed have to go to Lebanon and the UAE and Syria and Iraq, that's a pretty, even if Syria can't play at home, that's a pretty brutal travel schedule for South Korea.
Yep.
It's pretty brutal. Last time around in 2018, they made hard work of qualification. They didn't actually punch their ticket to Russia until the final match day, when they went away against Uzbekistan and got a really, really lackluster draw that earned them a lot of criticism. A 0-0 scoreless draw. But South Korea is Asian royalty. They have qualified for every World Cup, I think, since
1990.
Since 1990, and they've had over a dozen World Cup appearances overall, because even back in the heydays of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s.
Wait, since 1986, you were right.
'86, yeah. And even before then, they were one of the few countries that put Asia on the map, where they played in World Cups back in the '50s and the '60s, I believe, as well. They have by far and away the highest number of appearances of any Asian team in the World Cup. So, you know, if 2018 proved anything, we saw some big names all across the world not qualify. Could we see a big casualty from Asia? I think it's possible. It's a tough group, like I said, but I think South Korea should be at Qatar. So I have them going to Qatar. It may not. It may be difficult, but they'll be there.
Well said. Listen, their track record just says it all, man. Every World Cup since 1986, they have a very good league structure. They always have a good manager. Now this time around, it's Portuguese Paulo Bento. They always have a few stars in their team that's playing for a big team in Europe. And now, you know, there's Hwang Hee-chan now moved to Wolves, and there's Han-Ming Son, of course, doing the business every week for Tottenham Hotspur. They first qualified in 1954 and didn't make it back since 1996. I think when you talk about the 60s, you were thinking about that North Korean team that made it to the World Cup in 1966 and give Portugal a run for their money in that remarkable comeback by Portugal. So
I was also thinking of the 1954 South Korean team, because they were in 1954 World Cup. South Korea.
So South Korea also, we have to note, a former World Cup host, where they placed 4th at that very controversial tournament. And guess what? Back then, I was only 15 years old, Football Pharaoh. I absolutely had no idea what was going on. I thought that South Korea and Japan just did the business at that World Cup. But there was a lot of fishy decisions that went down, and I think they were helped. I think they played some good football, but they were helped. I think they go into Qatar. I really think they go in. I think they're gonna defy all odds, even with the hectic travel schedule. They're gonna bunker down, and they're gonna make it. They're gonna put these let's say Western Asian teams to the sword, and they're gonna make it. Ryan, talk to me about South Korea or Korean Republic.
I have South Korea going to Qatar. I think they're the best team in the group. I think it will be a war. It will be a war of attrition, but I think they get enough points to finish top of the group and go to Qatar. As you said, South Korea does have stars on their team, but they do have to be a little bit more pragmatic with this group, with all the travel. So I think they go to Qatar. It's going to be a war, but they will put teams to the sword, but it'll probably be like 2-1, 3-2 wins, I think, for them. But they'll finish top of their group and go to Qatar.
Well said, well said. I think we definitely have to reiterate that this whole COVID-19 and the travel restrictions could come into play, where eventually the AFC might have to centralize qualifiers, and that could come in. So just make note of that. We have to make note of that, and that could actually affect things where the UAE always seems to be a safe haven for everything. Even in the sport of cricket, they always run to the UAE to play everything, because they're type of team that has good diplomatic ties with a lot of countries. Dubai comes to mind. So this is something that we have to actually put into consideration, the COVID-19 situation. Look, we have 2 teams left in this group, and I did this on purpose to leave the 2 rivals for last. We're going to talk about Iraq, who first made it in 1986, the same year Canada qualified for the World Cup. It has been 35 years, but Iraq has been showing some promise, and they are back. They are back grouped with Iran again, as they were grouped in the last round, right?
Yes.
So, Football Pharaoh, talk to me about Iraq here.
You know, Iraq almost always makes it to the latter rounds of World Cup qualifying in Asia, but for some reason they always dither by the wayside, and they never really come close. They're under new management now. Dick Advocaat is Dutchman. He's known as somewhat of a journeyman. He's come in at the helm now. They played Iran in the previous round. A lot of history between them and the Iranians. They're neighbors and bitter rivals. They beat Iran. I believe, at home in the previous round, before ultimately losing to them on the final match day and finishing second to qualify for this round as one of the best runners-up. I think the onus is on Iraq to prove the doubters wrong and show that history will not repeat itself yet again. But until they do, even though I don't think there's very much in quality separating them and the Syrians and the Emiratis, I want them to put their money where their mouth is. I have them miss the flight because I put hopes in Iraq before to make a splash in World Cup qualifying, but they haven't done it in a very long time in a very meaningful way where they've come close to qualifying. I haven't missed the flight, I think, unless they prove me wrong.
Well said, well said. Some names, some standout names for me, for Iran. I was very impressed with Muhammad Ali at the last Asian Cup. He now plays for Al Duhail in Qatar. That's how impressive he was. He has 35 caps. The man is only 21 years old. You think about Alaa Abdul Zahra, 122 caps. He's the captain of the team. Ali Adnan, who is currently unattached, recently played, I think, for Montreal.
Vancouver.
Vancouver Whitecaps. He's a quality left back. Used to play for Napoli in the Syria. I am surprised he's unattached, seeing that left backs are like such a rare commodity. And he's definitely quality. So they have quality in their team. Ahmed Ibrahim comes to mind as well. And there's MLS talent in the team. Justin Merrim. And look, I don't think anyone should take Iraq lightly. Iran for sure should not take them lightly, but I think Iraq would have to be very gritty. It's a tough group. It's a very, very tough group. When you have Iran and South Korea, World Cup quality teams that were at the last World Cup in the same group, and you have Syria playing well, the UAE playing well, Lebanon could be a banana peel as well. I had no choice but to put Iraq in miss the flight. Sorry Iraqis watching this, but you're gonna miss the flight. Ryan, where do you have them?
I have them in standby. I like the way Iraq has their talent. I think they could fight for the playoff spot, the third place spot. They'll be fourth or third for me. I think they have talent. They could be slipped up and could be worse, but I think standby is a good place for them. They'll be fighting for fourth or third, and they could miss out just by a hair. They could be in the playoff, but it's going to be right there down to the last day for them. I have them on standby.
Well said. They have definitely shown promise, so I think that's a quality prediction right there. Last but not least, Team Melli, Iran, who qualified in 1978, took a 20-year hiatus, came back to 1998, where they famously beat the United States of America. Could remember Azizi with that goal. 2006, 2014, and 2018. So they have qualified for back-to-back World Cups, and they were quite impressive at the last World Cup as well. Could Iran make it 3 in a row? They do have the quality to do so. Football Pharaoh, take it away.
Well, Iran certainly do have the quality to make it to a third successive World Cup. On paper, they are a top 2 team in this group. And yet again, they've been paired with South Korea in the same World Cup qualifying group. They can't seem to avoid each other. It's become something sort of an East Asian, West Asian rivalry in recent times. And they've gotten the best of South Korea, both in 2014 and in 2018. They topped both qualifying groups. This will be a little bit controversial, though. I think that Iran gave a lot more questions than they did answers in the previous round. You may remember they flirted with disaster. They dropped points to Bahrain. They lost to Bahrain away from home. They lost to Iraq. They needed to rally in a similar fashion that the UAE did in the final stretch back in June to really shine through and blaze through their games to top this group. I'm not convinced that this is as solid an Iranian team as the one who qualified for the last 2 editions of the World Cup. I think they have to be really careful here because they have shown that they can be stymied by other West Asian opposition. And because of that, I actually have Iran on standby. I can't say with a clear conscience that they're definitely going to Qatar.
Interesting. Ryan, let me know your thoughts. Before I share mine on Iran and finish off Group A.
I have them going to Qatar. I think they'll finish second in the group. I think they'll buckle down and use the momentum they had from the June window to push forward. I think they know what they need to do in this group. I think they know they have to be more pragmatic as well. And I think they do have the talent to finish top 2 in their group. I think they finish under South Korea, but I think they go to Qatar.
Well said, well said. Iran, man. As you said, they flirted with disaster big time. I actually thought they could have missed out. They could have. It was a very tricky thing. But then they pulled it back, man. They pulled it back, and it shows the team is very tenacious. They're now under management, Dragan Skokic, and they still pretty much have the core of the team that they had back in 2018 and in the Asian Cup as well, where they did do well, even though they didn't go on to win it. They were shocked, but they always seem to have these talented players. Sada Azmouna, Alireza Jahanbakhsh, Mehdi Taremi plays for Porto, and he looked good. Remember that goal he scored in the last Champions League? And there's still that core of players that I'm not going to get too deep into individuals. I'm talking about Team Melli here. And I like to take the time to big up a big Iranian fan, Daniel Refi. He's still around, football Pharoah. Daniel Refi's still around. Yeah, big up.
He's been kind of missing for a while.
Yeah. He's been around my channel lately. Big up to Daniel Refi. I hope you get the shout out. But look, I think Iran are turning their fortunes around after a slow start in qualifiers, and I think they're going to Qatar. I honestly think they're going to it, barring another catastrophic run in the groups here. I think Team Melli will be okay. I'm saying going to Qatar. So that does it for Group A.